The court falls silent. The air inside the Queen's court was alive with clicking mandibles, the dry scrape of chitin against stone, and the rumble of voices that did not belong to anything remotely human. Thousands of compound eyes glittered down at me from balconies high above, reflecting the pale bioluminescent glow that seeped from the walls. I was the only warm-blooded creature in the chamber. One fragile human, ringed in by guards who could snap me in half without breaking stride. My wrists were bound in resin shackles that pulsed faintly, alive in a way no prison should be. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but there was nowhere to go. At the far end of the hall, she sat upon her throne of living coral and hardened amber, the Queen of the Hive. Towering, armored in plates the color of obsidian oil, her crown was not fashioned by jewelers but grown from her own body. Her voice, when it rolled through the chamber, shook my ribs. You stand accused, human, of trespassing in sanctums forbidden even to our kind. You desecrated the blood chambers of the hive. Do you deny it? I didn't bother answering right away. My mouth was dry, my tongue heavy. Whether I spoke or stayed silent, this court wanted my execution. I was not here for justice. I was here for spectacle. The crowd hissed, eager for my death. And then, silence. A small figure detached itself from the shadows at the foot of the throne. Barely waist-high, its body was a strange blend of humanoid proportions and insectoid ancestry. Soft plates of pearlescent chitin covered thin limbs. Its eyes were brighter than the court's torches. The royal heir. I had seen the child only once before, from the corner of my cell. I hadn't expected to see them again. The guards stirred uneasily as the little one scampered down the steps, ignoring the Queen's warning click. The nobles murmured in alarm. No heir approached a condemned criminal. No heir approached me. And yet the child crossed the court without hesitation, tiny claws tapping against the polished stone. The sound echoed like a drumbeat in my ears. They reached me, looked up with those wide alien eyes, and in a voice that cut through the chamber like a blade, they spoke. Father. The word was in my tongue, broken but unmistakable. The court froze. The nobles gasped and hissed, some recoiling as if struck. Even the Queen's expression faltered, mandibles stilling mid-click. Thousands of alien voices died at once. Father, the child repeated, softer this time, and clung to my leg with small arms that trembled. My body moved before my mind caught up. My hands, still bound, lowered. I rested them gently against the child's head, smoothing down the ridge of chitin there the way I used to brush my daughter's hair back on earth. The child pressed closer. The silence deepened, oppressive, suffocating. The Queen rose from her throne, her body unfolding with a terrifying grace. Her shadow fell across the hall, across me, across the child who clung to me as if I were the only anchor in a storm. Her voice was colder now, sharpened to a killing edge. Explain. My heart thudded painfully. There was no way to explain this without digging up truths the hive would never want to hear. And yet, what choice did I have? I drew a breath, the stale air of the chamber burning in my lungs. It began, I said slowly, when your heir first came to me in the cells. They were curious. They were kind. And I. The memory rose unbidden, of laughter in the dark, of a small voice asking questions no guard dared to answer, of my own hand reaching out despite every warning not to. And I could not turn them away. The Queen's compound eyes narrowed. The court stirred again, outraged whispers bubbling like boiling tar. But still no one moved. No one dared interrupt. Because the impossible had already happened. The alien Queen's child had called me father. And the whole court had fallen silent. How the child found a father. The Queen's eyes fixed on me, cold and unblinking, but I didn't flinch. The court might have wanted blood, but they also wanted a story. And so I gave it to them. It had begun weeks earlier, when I was little more than another specimen rotting in their cells. The hive didn't starve me, didn't beat me. That almost would have been easier. No, they studied me. Their physicians clicked and hummed while poking at my muscles, drawing blood, noting how slowly or quickly I healed. To them I wasn't a soldier, or a diplomat, or even a man. I was an oddity in a jar. The cell itself was alive, walls pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, resin flowing to seal cracks. The guards who brought food never spoke to me. I existed in silence, except for the hum of the hive. Until the day I heard a different sound. Light, uncertain footsteps. Not the heavy tread of armored soldiers, but something quicker, almost playful. When I looked up, I saw them, the Queen's heir, peering between the bars with eyes too bright for the gloom. They tilted their head, studying me like I was some strange beast. "You are soft," they said, the words clumsy but in my tongue. I laughed, an ugly dry sound I hadn't heard for myself in weeks. "You're not wrong." The child frowned, mandibles twitching. "Why do you make that noise?" "That's laughing," I told them. "It means I find something funny." They blinked, as if the idea of finding anything funny was an alien concept. Maybe it was. But the next day they came back. And the day after that. At first they only asked questions. What is laugh? What is sky? Why do humans bleed red? I answered them as best I could, not because I thought it would save me, but because it felt like talking to a child again. Like telling bedtime stories to my daughter back home, before the deployment that stranded me here. The guards tried to keep the heir away, but royalty doesn't take orders from common soldiers. They snuck back again and again, sometimes with stolen morsels of food, sometimes just to sit cross-legged outside the bars while I spoke. One evening, I broke a splinter of resin off the wall and carved it into the shape of a little bird. Crude, rough, but recognizable. I pushed it through the bars. "This is for you," I said. The child turned it over in their claws, staring as if I had handed them a fragment of the stars. "It is mine." "Yes. A gift." They clutched it tight, eyes glowing with something I had never seen in the hive before, wonder. From then on, they stopped calling me human. They started calling me teacher. Then one day, when my back was turned, I heard them whisper father. I didn't correct them. I couldn't. Because in those quiet moments, with no one watching, I felt like one again. But it wasn't just games and words. The hive is a nest of daggers, even for its own bloodline. One night, the air filled with shrieks and fire as part of the hive's lower chambers collapsed. Sabotage, maybe. Or a coup attempt. The smoke reached the cells fast. Guards abandoned me in the chaos, but the air didn't. They stumbled into the chamber, coughing, eyes wide with terror. "Father!" they cried, tiny claws scrabbling at my bindings. I didn't think. I just acted. I ripped against the resin cuffs until my wrists bled, smashed the bars with a broken length of pipe, and dragged the child out into the smoke. Every corridor burned, collapsing in showers of ash and sparks, but I carried them pressed tight against my chest. When the ceiling cracked and a slab of stone came crashing down, I didn't run. I wrapped myself around the air and took the brunt of the fall. My shoulder shattered, pain white-hot, but the child lived. Their sobs were the last thing I remembered before the hive's medics pulled us from the wreckage. After that, there was no going back. The child refused to be parted from me, and the word father became the only name they had for me. Now, in the silence of the court, I let those memories pour into my voice. I did not choose this bond, I told the Queen. But neither did I refuse it. Your heir calls me father because when no one else would protect them, I did. The nobles hissed in outrage, clattering their limbs. Corruption, they called it. Blasphemy. Treason. But the Queen said nothing. She simply stared at me, her eyes reflecting 1,000 possibilities, weighing every word. And her child, still clinging to my leg, looked up at her with a defiance no noble had ever dared show before. Trial by fire. The uproar in the Queen's court was deafening. Nobles shrieked, guards stamped their limbs against the floor, and the balconies quivered with the weight of outrage. The word father echoed again and again in a dozen tongues, spat like poison. Corruption, one noble thundered. Blasphemy, another hissed. He has ensnared the heir with weakness, the crowd seethed. The Queen lifted one clawed hand, and the chamber froze. Her voice carried like the toll of a bell. Enough. Words do not weigh truth. Deeds do. Her many eyes fixed on me. If this human's bond with my heir is real, then it will endure trial. If it is false, it will break. The decree was simple, a test in the arena. The hive's arena was no coliseum of stone, but a cavern grown vast and terrible, its walls alive with throbbing light and resinous vines. Thousands of nobles gathered in rings high above, their eyes glinting down like cruel stars. I stood on the sand with nothing but my hands. Beside me, the Queen's heir clung to my arm, trembling but refusing to be led away. The Queen's voice boomed from above, "Protect what you claim, human. Survive, and prove yourself. Fail, and both of you will die." The gates cracked open. The first beast slithered out, a centipede the size of a horse, mandibles dripping venom that hissed where it struck the sand. The crowd shrieked approval. I had no weapon, no armor. What I did have was instinct, desperation, and the knowledge that no one else was going to keep that child alive. "Stay behind me," I whispered. The beast lunged. I dove aside, dragging the air with me, sand burning my skin. When the monster wheeled back, I scooped up a jagged shard of chitin that littered the floor. Not much of a blade, but sharp enough. As it reared again, I rammed the shard into one of its many eyes. The creature screeched, thrashing wildly, smashing itself against the arena walls until it collapsed in a twitching heap. The crowd went silent. Then another gate opened. This time it wasn't a beast. It was a noble warrior, armored in iridescent plates, spear in hand. They circled me with contempt. "You will fall," the noble hissed. "No soft flesh can guard the heir of the hive." They lunged. I caught the spear's shaft, twisting with every ounce of strength. My muscles screamed, but desperation lent me fire. I wrenched the weapon free, swung it low, and cracked their knee joint. The warrior fell. I could have killed them. Instead, I planted the spear in the sand and pulled the heir close. "Stay behind me," I said again. The crowd murmured at my choice. Mercy was weakness in their eyes, but I wasn't here to win their approval. I was here for the child. The final gate opened. The ground shook as something vast lumbered out, a beast of stone and armor, plated like a living tank. It bellowed, and the balconies shook with its roar. Even the air gasped. I couldn't fight this thing head-on. Not with a spear, not with bare hands. So I did what humans have always done when outmatched. I thought. The beast's armor had seams, narrow gaps where its plates shifted when it turned. Too small for me to reach. But maybe. I turned to the heir. "Do you trust me?" Their eyes locked on mine. "Yes, father." I handed them the spear. Their hands were small, clumsy, but determined. Together we ran, weaving between the beast's legs. It struck down with claws and tail, missing by inches. Sand flew, dust choking our lungs. At my shout, the child darted forward, jamming the spear into one of those seams. The beast roared, thrashing. I grabbed a fallen chain from the sand, leapt onto its back, and wrapped the links around its jaws, pulling with everything I had. It staggered, shrieked, and collapsed. The arena floor shook as the creature lay still. Silence fell. I dropped to my knees, lungs on fire, body broken in a dozen places. The air threw their arms around me, their small voice ringing clear in the cavern. "Father!" The word echoed up into the balconies, daring anyone to deny it. Above, the Queen rose slowly from her throne, her eyes locked on us. She had seen what no one could unsee, a human who had bled, fought, and nearly died, not for glory, not for survival alone, but to shield her child. The court did not cheer. They only watched, hushed and unsettled, as if something unthinkable had taken root before their eyes. Father of two worlds. The arena still smelled of blood and dust. My body ached with every breath, but I stayed upright because the heir's small hands clung to me as if letting go would mean losing everything. Above us, the hive court erupted. "He has bewitched the heir," one noble shrieked. "This is an abomination," another thundered. "The line must be cleansed," a chorus of voices cried, their hatred echoing like hammers on stone. The Queen lifted her clawed hand, and the voices died. She descended from her throne, every step echoing like the toll of a great bell. When she reached the edge of the arena floor, silence blanketed the court. Her eyes, black and faceted, fixed on me. "You bleed. You fight. But blood and combat are not strange to us. What I cannot understand is this. Why?" The word cracked like thunder. "Why did you risk your life, again and again, for a child that is not your own?" Not of your species. Not of your blood. Her gaze swept to the heir, who pressed closer to me, defiant even under her mother's stare. The queen's mandibles twitched, as though she could not decide whether to call it weakness or strength. I swallowed against the dryness in my throat. My whole body wanted to collapse, but this was the moment that mattered more than any spear or beast. Because family isn't just blood, I said. My voice was rough, but steady. It's who you protect, who you choose to stand beside. I didn't choose this bond, but once it formed, I could no more abandon it than I could abandon my own child back home. That is what makes us human. And maybe that is what makes us strong. The words hung in the cavern, alien and incomprehensible to many. Some nobles hissed in disgust, stamping their limbs against the stone. Others shifted uneasily, unsure. The queen studied me a long time. I felt the weight of centuries in her gaze, the cold calculus of a ruler who had never in her life seen compassion as anything but weakness. And then she spoke. The hive does not choose its bonds. They are forged by lineage, by blood, by strength. Yet my heir, her eyes flickered to the child, chooses you. They have stood by you even in the face of death. That is not something I, nor any noble here, can command. A ripple went through the court, shock mixing with outrage. From this day forward, the queen continued, her voice reverberating across the chamber, the human lives. More, he will remain as protector and guardian of the heir, until death or succession parts them. Chaos erupted. Nobles shrieked, some in protest, others in fear of what this meant. But none dared defy her decree. The queen's word was law. The heir's grip tightened around me, their mandibles clicking in joy. "Father," they said again, louder this time, proud. The queen did not silence them. I felt the court's eyes on me, 1,000 stares heavy with loathing, awe, or both. I was no longer just a prisoner. I was something far stranger, a human bridge in the heart of a civilization that had never believed in such things. That night, when the court finally emptied and the echoes of fury died away, I sat with the heir in a quiet chamber. My body still shook from exhaustion, but the child leaned against me, their eyes heavy with sleep. "You will not leave," they whispered. "No," I said softly. "Not while you need me." The words surprised me with their certainty. I thought of my daughter light years away, of how much I had lost. And then I looked down at the alien child who had given me back the title I thought I'd never deserve again. Father. It wasn't the same, and it never would be. But it mattered. When dawn came to the hive, rumors spread faster than fire through dry grass. Some said the queen had lost her mind. Others whispered that the hive had gained a strength no other empire could rival. A strength not of blood, but of choice. For me, the truth was simpler. I had come to the hive as a captive, expecting to die nameless in their shadows. Instead, I stood alive, carrying a title no one could strip away, Father. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep into my bones, that the galaxy would never be the same again.